With this I'm scraping by. At least it's cute that I tried. I wrote some songs that I sung. And have you heard I'm so young? And
industry is, Morse Communications, the newspapers in Alaska.
Yeah, I've heard that.
They're not, I don't want my reputation associated with theirs, I guess that's one way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that kind of with just smaller media markets. It's, if you don't have the advertising revenue, which is what a newspaper survives on, I'm a reporter. I make nothing. So,
well,
I get it.
I mean more like, so Morris Communications is owned mostly by the Morris family. Billy Morris is the chairman and CEO, and Billy manipulates the news in his newspapers to benefit his other financial concerns. That's what I mean. Price, income, and all that. Nobody's in newspaper journalism for the money.
Yeah.
It's just, that last newspaper, the Kenai Peninsula Clarion, the managing editor, shortly before I got there, he went and pulled the reporter's FOIA request about the fire chief's salary or something, had no right to do that. The mayor called, and, there's too much influence. There was a baby that was murdered and buried on the beach, and they didn't even run this, they wouldn't run the story,
Mm-hmm.
Anything that affects recreational fishing in the state of Alaska, the appearance of the town for tourism, this sort of thing, Morris papers try to kill the news.
Mm-hmm.
I heard about being young, but I'm not sure how it's done. But I heard more.
So we had the state senator example, and then in Kenai, the mayor calls the managing editor and says, "What the fuck is your reporter FOIA the fire chief's payroll? Like they want to know why somebody was fired, and they want to look at their pay, right?
Uh-huh.
This is all public information."
Mm-hmm.
And the managing editor went down and illegally, because you can't, if I file a FOIA, that's my FOIA. It's not the editor's FOIA or the newspaper's FOIA. That's my FOIA. The managing editor went down there and pulled it.
Went down where?
Down to City Hall and pulled the Freedom of Information request. Said, no, we don't want it.
In Kenai?
Yeah. So
what year was that?
So what I'm saying is in Kenai, that was 2012. So if you go look through the papers in 2012, look for the determination of a fire chief, I believe it was. And then in that, there was a FOIA request to get at, and it had to do with determination. And the mayor called and said, so it was Soldotna, though. It wasn't Kenai, it was the city of Soldotna.
But
the
Kenai paper is the only paper there, right?
Right. The Kenai paper covers Soldotna, but I wanted to be careful because the mayor of Kenai, if it's still Mark Navarro, would never do that. That guy's not crooked, strangely enough. Mayor Navarro is not crooked as far as I could tell. I don't know how he was mayor, but, so it's just that simple, right? The state senator rewrites the news and puts it in the paper. The mayor doesn't like a FOIA, he gets it canceled. What else do you need to know? Why is it so shitty? Why can they get away with anything? Those two things right there. And those are true. I put my hand on a Bible.
Easy for you to say, I say this to you every day. Easy for you to say.
just read that article.
Right. That stuff happens. John Sloha was shot by a trooper when the trooper had no business being where he was, but we weren't even given, like, I was going to submit a FOIA, and I was told it wouldn't be honored, and I said, well, that's illegal. And the trooper's response was, so sue us. I was like, well, what's that going to do? I'm going to sue the troopers in our court? Like, no. I've sat in the courtroom and watched a trooper and a DA argue over lying to the judge. And it's like, I'm not kidding. I'm not exaggerating that at all. Then the trooper went ahead and lied to the judge, and the judge knew it and admitted it, but said it didn't really matter, and he said it at the trial anyway. You want to take that direction?
That's insane.
That's the direction.
That summer I played a lot of solitaire. Thought about how I wanted to love you enough to miss you. A real small room, I played like I was furniture.
Female radio reporter, was it?
I'm sure you probably know who it was.
Yeah, so your story is your story, man, but Katie is a, how do I put this politely? I investigated her for quite some time while I was there, which caused us to clash. She was a member of a group that I would call a cult, in Nikiski, which is pretty close by, and was sort of using her position as a reporter at the local commercial radio station to do some things that I found sort of problematic for a person who calls themselves a reporter to do.
I would say the thing that you're talking about was brought up to me by a lawyer who said it in passing when I was like, hey, Katie told me this. And this is a guy who's just a lawyer in the area said, she's involved in some weird sex cult or something.
That is like, exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've noticed this about Alaska. I don't know how much time you've spent up here, but people get real weird.
About how I wanted to love missing you enough to love you.
I want to let you go here. I do want, if at all possible, is there any way you could give me like an overview of what the cult thing was without mentioning names or whatever, just what the general idea of that was? It seems like impossible in such a small community.
That is totally my story. You cannot have it.
No.
But I would be glad to give you a broad overview.
Okay, thank you.
Basically, there is this guy, and the reason I got connected with this, so there's this guy who I think lives in Hawaii now, who moved to Nikiski, and I don't really know exactly what ties he had there, but he came from this crazy church in Texas called, I think, like the House on the Rock or something. I would have to look it all up. I have all my notes somewhere. Anyway, he comes up and he basically like starts this church that a couple of families kind of peel off of some other, hardcore Christian, Old Testament, like just Bible thumpers. And so they start this really small church, and then at some point in the like 12 years or so that they started this church. But anyway, there ended up being this like core group of fewer than 20 people, probably like 12 to 15 adults, and then a bunch of kids who were out in Nikiski just following this one guy. And it was kind of like a broad spectrum of ages too. There was a couple of young couples that got sucked into it. There was one couple that like sold their house and moved into the basement of one of the church founders, and just like. The sex cult part came out because in the same week I was at the courthouse and I noticed like 3 couples filing for divorce at the same time, and all of the they all filed for divorce and then hooked up with each other. It was like this really strange, like the head of the church wanted this woman and got her to divorce her husband, and then a woman that he wanted to hook up with also divorced her husband, and like so it was this really weird like spouse just like swap thing that happened. And then one of the guys whose wife ended up with this head of this church just totally cried foul, and he ended up with like all 6 of their kids, and came to me and introduced me to this crazy pastor from Texas who came up to like fix the church. And at some point I have him on video actually talking about how they made him like strip down naked, and like they do these things called washings where they would like, it sounds like a perversion of Passover to me, where you wash people's feet and instead like everybody gets naked and they wash each other's bodies.
Whoa.
And there's on record testimony about this, because in all of these divorce cases, they basically ended up trying to like hash out in front of the judge what was abuse and what wasn't abuse, and if anybody had ever like done any of these washings to any of the kids that were in the church. It's really, really bonkers stuff. And again, I think there's still totally room for a story in there.
Did you ever do any like reporting that reached the news desk about this?
About the cult?
The cult thing.
No, that's one of my greatest regrets of my career, is not managing to get that story out before I left the paper. I still have all of this tape, like photos and interviews and all sorts of stuff, and I just did not manage to do that before I got out of there.
No way.
He also is pretty good friends with a woman named Lois, who was married to the leader of the cult.
Who's the leader of the cult?
I'm trying to remember his name. Bissett. Something Bissett. His son is Lucas, so the dad is Mark Bissett.
Yeah, he's sort of the white whale, I guess, in your story.
From garage rock for so stupid, girl, I don't miss your face floating in nothingness. And if you wanted to hear about my fear and disciple core, it should have made me missing out. But I say no, I'll just go floating on the way, every day, all day. Every day, all day. I could be in a bad mood every day, all day. I could be in a bad mood every day, all day. I could be in a bathroom every day, all day. I could be in the bathroom every day, all day. Put on some Arthur Russell.